What's the worst that can happen when you mess with a royal guard? Turns out, everything. One second, I'm laughing at my genius prank, and the next, I'm face first on the pavement with my dog being dragged away like a criminal. Phones are flashing, people are yelling, and suddenly, I'm the center of a viral disaster. My face is probably all over the internet by now, and trust me, it's not my best angle. How did it all spiral so fast? Let's break it down from the moment things went off the rails. Josh Hendricks, 26, was what you'd call a trouble magnet. Hailing from Austin, Texas, he wasn't the type to just blend into the background like a normal tourist. No, that would be way too boring for him. Josh had a need, a compulsive urge to stir things up, push boundaries, and get under people's skin just for the hell of it. He called it living life to the fullest. Everyone else just called it reckless. But Josh had his own code, never back down from a challenge. So when he found himself in London, staring at the legendary, stone-faced royal guards outside Buckingham Palace, it felt like destiny was calling. These guys were famous for their poker faces, and that was all the motivation Josh needed to do what he did best, cause a scene. The guard on duty was the perfect target. Tall, rigid, and looking like he hadn't smiled since birth, he stood there in his crimson coat and tall bearskin hat like a mannequin on steroids. His face was unreadable, locked in a stare so intense it could probably freeze boiling water. Josh smirked. "This guy thinks he's untouchable," he muttered under his breath. His mind was already racing with ideas, each more ridiculous than the last. He needed a reaction, something to prove he could crack the impenetrable wall of British tradition. Trisha, his best friend and self-proclaimed babysitter on this trip, noticed that dangerous glint in his eye. She knew exactly where this was headed. "Josh," she warned, narrowing her eyes, "don't even think about it." "Think about what?" he replied innocently, his grin widening. "You know what?" she shot back. "Just take your pictures like everyone else. We don't need another incident." Josh chuckled. "Relax, Trish. This isn't like the Paris thing." "Oh, really? Because last time you said that, we almost got deported," she snapped. "I am not spending another night in some sketchy hotel because you couldn't resist having fun." But Josh was already tuning her out. His attention had shifted to his four-legged partner in crime, Hulk, his massive bulldog. This wasn't just any dog. Hulk was a beast, with muscles like a linebacker and a bark that could send a grown man running. Despite his intimidating size, Hulk was surprisingly obedient, especially when it came to pranks. Josh had trained him to respond to a few unconventional commands. The dog sat at Josh's feet, wagging his tail expectantly. He could sense that something was about to go down. "All right, Hulk," Josh whispered, giving the dog a playful pat. "You ready to be a star?" Trisha groaned again. "Oh my God, Josh, no. You're not doing this." But Josh was already in full showman mode. He turned to face the guard, cupping his hands around his mouth like a megaphone. "Hey, soldier boy," he shouted, drawing the attention of nearby tourists. "You look a little stiff, man. Maybe do some stretches?" A few people chuckled nervously. Others quickly pulled out their phones, sensing that something Instagram-worthy was about to happen. The guard didn't even flinch. His eyes remained locked forward, his posture as unyielding as ever. Josh tilted his head, intrigued. "Wow, tough crowd," he muttered. "Okay, time to kick this up a notch." He leaned down and gave Hulk the signal. "Go get him, boy." In an instant, Hulk sprang to life. The dog shot forward, his paws pounding against the pavement as he closed the distance between himself and the guard. His teeth bared in a playful snarl, and he let out a deep, guttural growl. The reaction was immediate, and not in the way Josh had expected. Tourists screamed and scrambled to get out of the way. Phones were raised, capturing every second of the unfolding chaos. "Holy crap! Is that dog attacking the guard?" someone yelled. Trisha's face turned as pale as a ghost. "Josh, are you insane? Call him off. They're going to freak out." But Josh was too caught up in the moment. He watched eagerly, expecting the guard to finally crack under the pressure. Maybe he'd stumble back, shout, or at least give Hulk a warning glance. Any sign of weakness would be a victory. But no. The guard remained as still as a marble statue, completely unfazed by the snarling bulldog at his feet. It was almost eerie, like he was some kind of unbreakable robot. "Is this guy for real?" Josh muttered. He didn't have time to ponder it. Out of nowhere, two more guards appeared, armed and not looking the least bit amused. They moved with precision, flanking Josh like trained predators. One of them barked an order in a deep, authoritative voice. "Step away from the line, now." Josh froze. The words sliced through the air like a razor, jolting him back to reality. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or comply. Guys, it's just a dog," he stammered. "He's friendly, I swear." The guards weren't buying it. One of them reached for his radio, speaking rapidly into the receiver. The other kept his gaze locked on Josh, his expression cold and unrelenting. "Josh, do something!" Trisha screamed. "They're going to shoot him." Panic surged through Josh's veins. He lunged forward, trying to grab Hulk's collar, but the dog was already beyond the point of no return. He had crossed an invisible threshold, a boundary that no tourist was ever supposed to breach. This wasn't funny anymore. The tension in the air was suffocating, and Josh could feel the eyes of the crowd boring into him like daggers. Smartphones continued to record, immortalizing his worst mistake in digital permanence. Great, he thought bitterly. This is going to be all over the internet. He had wanted a reaction, but not like this. Definitely not like this. Josh didn't even have time to think. Everything happened in a flash. 1 second, Hulk was charging at the guard like some action movie hero, and the next, Josh was face first on the cold, hard pavement. The rough surface scraped his cheek, and before he could process what was happening, someone yanked his arms behind his back. He felt the sharp bite of handcuffs snapping into place. Pain shot up his shoulders as a guard pressed a knee into his spine, holding him down like he was some kind of dangerous fugitive. "Whoa, whoa, what the heck is going on?" Josh gasped, his words muffled by the pavement. He tried to lift his head, but the guard's grip tightened, forcing him back down. "It's just a dog. You guys are acting like I robbed a bank or something." His words didn't seem to register with anyone. Another guard was already wrangling Hulk, slipping a thick control loop around the dog's neck. Hulk snarled and squirmed, but couldn't break free. Josh's heart sank at the sight of his loyal companion being restrained like a criminal. "Hey, he's friendly, okay? Let him go," Josh protested, his voice strained. His pulse raced as adrenaline flooded his system. This was not part of the plan. "You have the right to remain silent," the guard restraining him said in a voice so cold and emotionless it could have come from an automated machine. His British accent was crisp and formal, the kind that made Josh feel like he was in a courtroom drama. Except this wasn't TV. This was real, and it was getting worse by the second. "Silent? Are you kidding me?" Josh sputtered, twisting his neck to look up at the guard. "This isn't an episode of Law and Order, dude. I'm a tourist. It was a joke. You know, haha." The guard didn't flinch. He simply tightened his grip, ensuring Josh couldn't move. Josh felt a fresh wave of panic wash over him. He had pulled plenty of stunts in his life, some wild, some borderline illegal, but he had never faced a response like this. These guards weren't messing around. Meanwhile, the scene around them was growing chaotic. Tourists huddled together, whispering in a mix of awe and fear. Phones were out in full force, their screens glowing as they recorded every humiliating second. Josh could hear snippets of conversation, each one making his stomach twist. "Is that the guy who sent the dog after the guard?" someone whispered loudly. "Yeah, it's him," another voice confirmed. "Unbelievable. What was he thinking?" Josh squeezed his eyes shut, silently cursing himself. He could feel the weight of their judgmental stares, like tiny daggers piercing his pride. He knew exactly what was happening. He wasn't just a guy in trouble anymore. He was a sideshow attraction, a viral sensation in the making. "This is insane," he muttered under his breath. He tried to shake off the growing sense of dread, but it clung to him like a second skin. A woman in the crowd spoke up, her voice carrying over the murmurs. "They're probably going to throw him in jail. Serves him right for disrespecting the guard." Josh's eyes snapped open. "Jail? No way. This was just a prank." Sure, it might have gotten a little out of hand, but it wasn't a crime, was it? As the guards hauled him to his feet and escorted him off the palace grounds, Josh's mind raced with a million thoughts. The crowd continued to gawk and film, and he could hear someone shouting, "World's dumbest tourist right here." He gritted his teeth, trying to block it all out. But deep down, he knew it was already too late. His image was plastered across half a dozen phones, and those videos would be online any minute now. By the time they shoved him into a police van, his phone was already blowing up. He didn't need to see the notifications to know what was happening. The hashtags were probably already trending. #tourist attack, #prank gone wrong, #Buckingham fail. His face, wide-eyed and panicked, was probably circulating across every platform. Somewhere in cyberspace, people were typing out comments faster than he could process. This is why tourists need to stay home, seriously. Dude thought he could play with the royal guard? Big mistake. But the Queen's got popcorn watching this drama unfold. Memes were already popping up. He could imagine them now. Hulk charging in slow motion, dramatic music swelling in the background. Someone probably added captions like, "When you mess with British tradition." Josh groaned, just thinking about it. At the police station, the nightmare continued. They stripped him of his phone, wallet, and pretty much anything else he had on him before leading him to a small, dimly lit room. The interrogation room smelled faintly of old coffee and disinfectant, a combination that did nothing to calm his nerves. He was plopped into a hard plastic chair that felt like it had been designed specifically for discomfort. Across the table sat a tall, stern-looking officer. The man's expression was unreadable, his eyes cold and assessing. He didn't say a word at first, just tapped a pen against the table in a slow, rhythmic pattern that was somehow more unsettling than if he'd started yelling. Josh cleared his throat, forcing a shaky smile. "So, how often do you guys deal with stuff like this?" he asked, trying to break the tension. The officer's brow twitched slightly, but he didn't smile. "Stuff like this?" he repeated, his voice low and measured. "You mean incidents involving security threats at one of the most high-profile landmarks in the country?" "No, not exactly common." Josh winced. "Okay, security threat is a bit of a stretch, don't you think? It was a prank, man, a harmless joke. My dog's basically a giant teddy bear." The officer's expression didn't change. "A joke that caused a public disturbance and could have been interpreted as an attack," he said flatly. "Do you have any idea how serious this situation is?" Josh blinked, stunned. "Serious? Are you kidding me? Look, I get it. Maybe things got a little out of hand. But nobody was in any real danger. Hulk just wanted to play. He's a good boy, I swear." The officer didn't seem impressed. He leaned forward slightly, fixing Josh with a hard stare. "Intentions don't matter when it comes to security protocol. You violated a restricted area and disrupted a major tourist site. There are consequences for that." Josh threw his hands up in frustration. "Oh, come on. You guys really need to lighten up. It's not like I ran into the palace waving a flag or something." The officer stood abruptly, signaling that the conversation was over. "Maybe you'll have time to reflect on that in the holding cell," he said before turning and leaving the room. The heavy door slammed shut behind him with a loud clang, leaving Josh alone in the suffocating silence. He sat there for a moment, staring at the blank walls, his mind racing. "Great, just great," he muttered to himself. "I try to have a little fun, and now I'm public enemy number one." Meanwhile, outside the interrogation room, the media frenzy was reaching new heights. Reporters swarmed the station, eager to get the latest scoop. Headlines like "American Tourist Sparks Palace Security Scare" and "Prank Gone Wrong, Arrest at Buckingham" were already making the rounds. Josh's name and face were everywhere, and the worst part? The whole world was watching. An hour later, Josh found himself sitting on a cold, metal bench in a holding cell. The dim overhead light flickered occasionally, casting long shadows on the gray walls. He rubbed his wrists, still sore from the cuffs, and leaned his head back against the wall, letting out a long, frustrated sigh. His phone, wallet, everything had been taken from him. Not that he needed his phone to know what was happening out there. The internet was probably on fire with his name right now. Every embarrassing frame, every bad angle caught on camera, all immortalized for the world to see. His reputation? Torn to shreds. He could practically hear the headlines: "Tourist disaster at Buckingham Palace" and "Dog prank on catastrophically wrong." He clenched his fist and slammed it lightly against the wall. "This can't be real. It's like some twisted nightmare," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. His thoughts were interrupted by the muffled sound of voices just outside the cell. Josh perked up, recognizing one of them immediately: Trisha. Of course, she was out there trying to clean up his mess, as usual. The girl deserved a medal for how many times she had bailed him out of trouble. "Look, I swear, he's not dangerous," Trisha pleaded, her voice exasperated but still desperate. "He's just an idiot. A really, really impulsive idiot, but he didn't mean to cause any harm." Josh winced at her choice of words. He couldn't even argue with it. Idiot was probably the nicest label people had for him right now. The officers, however, didn't seem convinced. Their voices were calm but firm. "The court will determine that," one of them replied, "but after the level of public attention this has drawn, I doubt there'll be much leniency." Public attention. Yeah, no kidding. Josh could only imagine the circus outside, reporters swarming the police station, photographers clicking away like vultures circling a fresh carcass. He imagined the headlines growing more sensational by the hour. Out in the world beyond those sterile walls, social media was ablaze. Every platform was buzzing with debate over the Buckingham incident. Clips of Hulk charging the guard were everywhere, with dramatic edits and exaggerated captions making the rounds. Comments flooded in faster than anyone could keep up with. "Are you serious? Arresting him for a prank? Chill out, Britain." "Nah, man, he crossed the line. You don't mess with their traditions like that." The guard didn't even flinch. Dude deserves a medal. Bet this tourist thought he was in a comedy show. Now look at him. There were memes galore. One showed Josh's face, wide-eyed with panic, next to the text, "When you realize British humor isn't what you thought it was." Another featured Hulk with the caption, "Attack level, overly excited good boy." Some people sided with Josh, calling the reaction an overblown case of cultural sensitivity. Others, however, were out for blood. "He disrespected the guard and endangered people. Lock him up." This is exactly why Americans have a bad rep abroad. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The debate was polarizing, but one thing was clear. Josh had become the symbol of tourist stupidity on a global scale. Inside the cell, Josh finally began to absorb the gravity of the situation. The adrenaline from earlier had worn off, leaving him with a sinking feeling in his gut. This wasn't just going to blow over. This wasn't some minor scuffle where he could apologize, pay a fine, and move on. No, this had turned into a full-blown international incident. "Man, I really messed up this time," he whispered to himself. His mind raced with questions. Would he get deported? Would this go on his permanent record? What about Hulk? Was his dog okay? The thought of Hulk being locked up in some kennel made his chest tighten with guilt. A guard walked by the cell, barely glancing in his direction. Josh wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in his throat. What was there to say, anyway? He had already made a fool of himself in front of the world. Trisha's voice echoed faintly again, still arguing his case. He could hear the frustration in her tone as she tried to reason with the officers. "Look, he's not a criminal. He's just an idiot with a bad sense of timing, okay? Please, there's got to be something you can do." Josh felt a pang of guilt. Trisha shouldn't have to be doing this. She shouldn't have to clean up after his stupidity. Meanwhile, the media frenzy outside continued to escalate. News vans lined the street in front of the station, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Reporters jostled for position, each trying to get the latest scoop on the American tourist debacle. One news anchor spoke into the camera with practiced seriousness. "Public opinion is divided tonight as authorities determine the fate of an American tourist who caused a major disturbance at Buckingham Palace. The question on everyone's mind, was this a harmless prank or a reckless act of disrespect?" Another channel played clips of experts analyzing the event. "It's about cultural boundaries," one commentator explained. "What may seem like a joke to an outsider can be deeply offensive in a country with centuries-old traditions." Josh's face appeared on screen, his expression frozen in a moment of sheer panic. The image was now infamous, shared, reshared, and memed into oblivion. Back in the holding cell, Josh ran a hand through his hair, trying to steady his nerves. He was starting to feel the full weight of the consequences pressing down on him. Tomorrow wasn't just another day. It was going to be a reckoning. He'd have to face reporters, the public, and possibly a courtroom. He wasn't ready for that, not even close. But he knew one thing for sure. No amount of jokes or charm was going to get him out of this one. He had crossed a line, and now he had to face the music. With a deep sigh, he muttered, "All right, Josh, time to own up, no more games." For once in his life, there was no escape plan, only consequences. How would you have handled the situation if you were in Josh's shoes? Do you think the authorities went too far, or did Josh get what he deserved for his reckless prank? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you or anyone you know ever experienced something similar while traveling? Share your stories and reactions. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the story. Remember, this story was created to shed light on important issues like respecting cultural boundaries and understanding the consequences of our actions. Together, we can make the world a better, more empathetic place.